Shabbat Shalom, Gemar Chatima Tova. How is everyone doing? Coming along. Now, I know from some of you that are here, I'm pretty sure, have had extensive experience with scouting. Others of you may have served in the military of one country or another. And you may know that one of the most important pieces of equipment that you can have, either as a scout of any type or whether you are serving in the military, is having a compass. Right? It's important to have a compass on you. It's like one of those things you find in everybody's backpack whenever they are first learning to go hiking. That little thing they hold in their hand, and it tells you which way is north. And if you know where north is, then you know where south is. And if you know where north and south are, you can find your east and west. And now you are home free. Almost. Because there's something missing, right? You can bring out this little device. You can even make one at home with a cork, a needle, and a bit of a magnet and a little bowl of water. And you can find where north is. But does north tell you where to go? Does having a compass actually give you a direction? Not exactly. Because there are two very important pieces of information you need in addition to knowing which way is north and thus the other directions of the compass. What other pieces of information do you need? Where you are and where you are going. Right? If you don't know those two pieces of information, then knowing that north is over there doesn't help you at all. Because if you don't know where you're going, then you won't know which direction you want to be walking, even once you know which way is north. And if you don't know where you are, even if you know where you want to go, you don't know where it is, which direction it is from the place you are currently standing. And this is the message of this time of year, is to make sure that we orient ourselves correctly. The reason why Shabbat Shuvah is called Shabbat Shuvah, the reason why in Judaism we talk about repentance with the Hebrew word teshuvah, is because it means to turn. But you have to know which way to turn. And the only way you can tell which way to turn is to know which way you want to go and where you are currently. And finding your current location is sometimes harder than you think. Right? Nowadays, we can pull out our little phone or a GPS system, and we can find our location anywhere on Earth in a matter of seconds. It is quite an amazing piece of technology. And then all you need to do is figure out where you want to go, and with a touch of a button, you've got your direction to begin walking. But when it comes to life, even if we know where we want to be, even if we understand what our goals are, being able to give an honest, accurate, and clear appraisal of where I currently stand can be very difficult. In Hebrew, again, this is something we call the cheshbon nefesh. This is the spiritual accounting. And I think that the term accounting was chosen very deliberately by our ancestors, because they said at this time of year, you would be doing another kind of cheshbon. You would be doing another type of accounting. You would be counting how much wheat you have. You would be counting how much fruit you have harvested. You would be counting how much of the vegetables you had been able to preserve and pickle and store to be able to feed you for the coming months when you would not be harvesting so much. And that kind of accounting gave you your plan. You would then know, okay, this is what I've got, this is where I need to be, this is what I need to do. But much of our time we spend counting what we have in our bank account, what we have in our house, what we have in our retirement fund, what we have in our investments. As much time as some people will obsess, is the stock market up? If the stock market down? What's happening with interest rates? What's happening with the currency? Do we spend as much time examining our own account, the account of our actual soul? You know, the part that actually continues with you, regardless of what happens in this life. Sadly, we don't exactly spend as much time. When you open up the newspaper, or websites, since people don't read the newspaper anymore, you are very unlikely to find a spiritual compartment that is as big as the financial section, let alone as big as the sports section. And yet Judaism says this is critical, this is crucial. But it is hard. Even if you choose to engage in cheshbon nefesh, to do this spiritual accounting of yourself. It ain't easy to be honest with yourself. It's not easy to see your flaws and your mistakes. It's also not easy to see your strengths and your virtues. And this can mean it's very hard to get an accurate positioning of where I am, to then know which way to turn to move closer to the path that God has given me as my goal. But not to worry, because God has already accounted for this. God has already given us a clue. Before I explain exactly how that works, I need you to make sure you understand something else that is very similar. Anybody here remember the Rubik's Cube craze of the 1980s? Right? Little 3x3 sides, little cube, you had colors on each side. You would mix it up, and then the goal was to return it to its original state with a complete solid color for all 9 squares on each of the 6 faces. Anybody here ever complete a Rubik's Cube? You think it's impossible. How do you do it? Well, most of us, we would look at the current cube we're holding, and we'd look at it, and we'd say, okay, well, I got a couple red here, and there's a couple red over here, so let me try and move all the red together. And maybe you could get one side, but once you get one side, trying to move it to the other side without messing up the other side, it all seems too hard. Do you know what the world record is for doing a Rubik's Cube? A few seconds. A few seconds. The world's record for doing the Rubik's Cube continues to get broken because they have to measure it in hundredths of seconds. And people use specially lubricated Rubik's Cubes because their fingers fly so fast on them that you can't even do it with the original cube. It simply would break with the friction of moving it that quickly. They're not even looking at where the cube is. How do they do that? That is exactly the question. How do they do that? It is this magical word that is used so much in our modern world. It's an algorithm. There is a formula for how you can solve any Rubik's Cube. And once you have memorized those steps, as soon as you glance at it, your hands can go into autopilot, and it's just a question of how fast you can move your fingers. And any Rubik's Cube can be solved in a matter of moments, if you've memorized those steps, if you understand the formula that's needed. And that formula doesn't change regardless of the configuration of the cube. So what does this have to do with Judaism and Torah? Well, Torah is the algorithm. Right? All of our lives are like individually scattered Rubik's Cubes. Each one of us have the different facets of our lives in a different configuration, in more or less forms of chaos and order, more or less happy with the current configuration. But all of us need to reach that in state where we can feel whole and complete. And even if we don't know where we currently sit, even if our cheshbon nefesh is incomplete because we have trouble examining ourselves clearly, even if we can't see the other side of our own cube, if we follow the algorithm that God gave us, if we follow the mitzvot, the commandments, if we put them into practice in our lives, it doesn't matter what shape your cube is in. You will eventually bring it to a higher state of order. You will eventually bring it to a higher state of completeness, of wholeness, of shlemut, of shalom, of peace, of harmony. That's the gift that God gave us. He knew that we would seek to improve our lives. At least the vast majority of us do. But he also knew that each of us would face severe limitations, and how successfully we could do that, left to our own analyses and left to our own ability to orient in the correct direction to reach those goals. And so God gave us a perfect algorithm. It's a few 100,000 letters long, but when we follow it, regardless of where we are standing, regardless of how well we even know where we are standing, regardless of how well we can even visualize where we want to be, we move closer and closer and closer. Now, it doesn't take a few seconds. Right? Living a life of Torah and putting ourselves in order is not something that can be done with a well-lubricated cube. Do not expect to be breaking world records on this. But nevertheless, it is an inevitability that by following the commandments that God has given us, regardless of what state we may think our life is in, whether we feel that we are beyond hope or whether we feel that we are near perfect, following the commandments will move us towards a higher state of being, whether we understand the steps we are taking or not, whether we are even aware of the effect it is having on us. In time, you will look back and see how it all unfolded and moved you to this position. But for the moment, allow yourself to be moved through the commandments. Try them. Try the ones that perhaps you have been waiting to begin for some time. Allow them to guide you, and you will recognize that you will reach this state of peace and harmony. And this will bring blessing for you and all in the new year. Shabbat Shalom and Gamar Chatima Tova.